Good morning, friends and enemies. Today we will be finishing up our ranking series for the 2025 fantasy football season. We've done running backs, we've done wide receivers, we have done quarterbacks earlier this week. If you've missed any of those ranking shows, we will put them in the show notes. Today we wrap it up with the tight ends. We're starting at the very top, tier number one, in a tier by himself, a man that broke the boundaries of fantasy football last year. That would be Brock Bowers. This tier one, is just the tight end one by a wide margin. I mean, at this point, he's one of the few that has lived up to the generational prospect label that was put on him last year. He's just the clear tight end one by many kilometers over and over again. Legendary fantasy player and prospect at this point. I have done a ton of best ball drafts already this summer, and Brock Bowers tends not to fall much further than like the 2-2, 2-3. I see a lot of people, me taking him at the turn. It's just a really good player at a position that is hard to fill, and you just know what you're getting week in and week out. So we will move to tier number two, which is filled with two guys. And this tier is guys that will give you elite numbers. So you have Brock Bowers, who is legendary. You have tier two, guys that will give you elite numbers, and this should not be a surprise, but it is Trey McBride. McBride is a set-and-forget high-end tight end one. I mean, he's coming off of a 111-catch, 1,146-yard season with very few changes to that Arizona Cardinals offense. So similar setup, similar system. No reason to think that, he won't produce 95, 100 catches again this year. The only thing that's a little bit nerve-wracking with McBride is, like, when are the touchdowns going to come? He has 5 touchdowns through 49 career games. But again, touchdowns can be fluky from year to year. Like, if next year he just had 11 touchdowns, would anyone really be surprised? No. So that's the way you should consider him. George Kittle is the other guy in this tier. It is like the 5th year in a row he's being undervalued in drafts. McBride is going in like the 3rd round. Kittle's going typically in like the 5th round, the 507, 508, 509, which has pretty much been his placeholder draft position for like the last 5 years. You've got no Debo in town. I mean, Purdy is obviously locked up now for the long term. These two have phenomenal chemistry. So I could see Kittle seeing an even further uptick in targets this year. So just a tight end one that's going to produce elite numbers. Tier number 3, I made this tier by itself for one player because, as I've been explaining to you throughout these tier videos, the tiers are broken up by basically, if I saw this guy in your team, how would I feel about them in that position? It's not necessarily like, this is tight end 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, this is 5, this is 6, and you should rank them accordingly and draft them accordingly. But as I was looking at tier number 2, where I have McBride and Kittle, and then I have tier number 4, which is guys I'll get to in a second, TJ Hockenson was in the middle of those guys for me. He has not produced like McBride and Kittle, and I don't think he deserves to be in that tier, despite you probably being able to make the argument that in the right situation, he could be there. But I think he's better than the guys in the tier below him, which is where I have him here. It's like, I think he should give you elite numbers, and he's in a tier by himself in tier number 3. He is now 2 years removed from the ACL tear. And I think this year he will reestablish himself as one of the top fantasy tight ends in all of football. The thing with Minnesota, obviously, is they have so many good weapons already with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and a revamped offensive line, which might mean less blocking for TJ Hockenson, Aaron Jones, etc. But you have J.J. McCarthy coming in as basically a rookie quarterback. So it might take some time for things to ramp up in the passing offense in terms of volume, efficiency, and all that kind of stuff. But I think by the end of the year, you're going to be looking at Hockenson as a week in, week out, top 4 fantasy tight end. Right above this tier. Tier number 4 is when it starts to get a little bit longer. This is the tier of insert and don't touch. Pause. Insert into your lineups for the year and do not touch. It will come with inconsistencies. It will come with ups and downs. At some point, you're going to be like, he's a top 2 tight end. And at other points, you're going to be like, he's a top 12 tight end. That is where this tier wraps up for me. So in this tier, we have David Njoku, Sam Laporta, Jonnu Smith, Evan Engram, Tucker Kraft, and Mark Andrews. Njoku has like quietly been a phenomenal fantasy asset for like the last 3 years. And he's kind of like the quintessential, it takes time for those like young, explosive tight ends to break out. Remember, he was a first-round pick back in 2019 with Evan Engram and O.J. Howard and didn't really pan out for the first few years. And now you're seeing all of it kind of come together. A lot of what Njoku does will kind of tail back to who's at quarterback. Right now, it seems like Joe Flacco is probably set up to be the starting quarterback. In the beginning of the season, at least, if he's the quarterback, then they're going to throw the ball a ton, and that's big for Njoku's ceiling. If Flacco loses the job at any point, then I think this offensive game plan and the scheme here and just the passing volume starts to plummet and tank, as does most of the weapons here. But njoku, if Flacco is the guy going in, like, I feel really good about njoku as my set and forget tight end. We have Sam Laporta. I will say, I think if there's anyone, right, I've gone through all the other positions and I've talked about Ben Johnson leaving Detroit, and I'm not overly concerned about the other players there. Like, I think the offense is so good. It is such a high floor offense because of the pieces there. The running back room is great. The wide receiver room is great. Jared Goff is an accurate pocket passer. The offensive line basically elevates the entire offense. I actually think Sam Laporta, if anyone, likely takes the biggest hit for Ben Johnson leaving, because if you've watched over the last couple of years, like, Laporta's been really good, obviously, but there have been a ton of plays and a ton of statistical input to Sam Laporta that I think have come from just like beautifully designed plays where it's like broken and he's just left running wide open over the middle. And I don't want to like take it away from him, but at the same time, if you have less creative play callers and less creative trick plays going on, like, it does not benefit a guy like Sam Laporta as much. I could think of like 3 or 4 plays over the last 2 years where Laporta's just running wide open down the sideline because of how well some of these play designs were. And listen, like, they got Ben Johnson, so they'll probably keep a lot of those in the offense. But I'm just saying, like, that to me for Laporta, he seems, and maybe this is just anecdotal from what I remember watching on Red Zone and shit, he seems like someone who really benefited from Ben Johnson. So that's why I kind of put him in this tier. And I think you can make the argument that maybe he belongs in the tier with Hockenson, but I don't think I'm there with it. Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith is a little bit of a tough one because he benefited so greatly from the fact that defenses played cover 2 at one of the highest rates in the NFL against them to stop from the Tyreek and Jalen Waddle deep balls. And what it led to is a ton of Achane and Jonnu Smith dump offs. Now, this team has had to adapt the way that they've run their offense like year in and year out. It was this fast pace, deep ball, Tyreek Hill every other fucking play. Then it moved to the line of scrimmage with Jonnu Smith and Devon Achane. Now do teams, seeing what they did last year, start to shift back into like playing a middle style of defense? And does that hurt Jonnu Smith? I don't know, but they clearly unlocked something with him last year. And I think he's a set and forget guy at the end of the year. You're going to look back and be like, he did good for me. Evan Engram, he moves to Denver. I think he should probably be Bo Nix's number 2 option behind Courtland Sutton immediately. And we've seen Sean Payton have plenty of success with fantasy tight ends in the past. Tucker Kraft, he had a really strong, like, under-the-radar sophomore campaign. 50 catches, 707 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Again, this is just year 2. We want to talk about guys like taking a while to break out. He had a pretty good rookie year that pointed towards him being a good NFL player, and then he had the 5,707 season as a sophomore. And it's like Kraft is really coming into his own as a low-end tight end 1 option that can be relatively consistent for you. He is a red zone threat. He's a threat with a ball in his hands. He can make big plays. I just like him being attached to this offense and the scheme and the offensive coaching and all that kind of stuff. So I like Tucker Kraft a lot here. You got Mark Andrews, where tale of 2 halves last year, man. Saved by like massive touchdown numbers, though his like overall yardage numbers on a per game basis and participation overall have been kind of dwindling by the year. And I'm around a lot of Baltimore fans, being in the office with Jack and Casey and just, a bit more anecdotal evidence here, but they're not very high on like Mark Andrews being a key cog of the overall passing scheme here. Like, you have Lamar Jackson now putting up insane MVP type numbers, and like Andrews's yards per game and participation have kind of like been going down year over year, which doesn't feel very secure to me for Mark Andrews. Like, sure, if you want to bet on him scoring another like 10 touchdowns, 11 touchdowns, he'll probably end up being a great fantasy option for you, but I don't know that I want to do that. Again, at the end of the year, he'll probably end up scoring a bunch, so you could put him into this tier, but just know that he'll probably have a lot of dud games for you throughout the season. Then we move into tier 5. These are the guys that I think have some positives going for them, but they're a risky starter. Like, if they are your tight end 1 going into the season, I'm gonna feel some types of way about it. And we'll start with the man himself, Travis Kelce. The Travis that we once knew and loved as a fantasy guy is gone. What we're just hoping for, and similar to the point I just made with Mark Andrews, we're hoping for Mahomes basically to get back to 40-plus passing touchdowns, and Kelce kind of luck his way into being the guy who the red zone targets are drawn up for. We're hoping that like Mahomes throws 42 and Kelce can catch 9 or 10 or 11 of them. And in that case, he's going to be a tight end 1, obviously, but he's not the guy who's catching 8 for 120 and a touchdown consistently anymore. He's clearly like very, very past his prime. So again, things going for him, but like I'm not going to bet on him being a top 5 tight end. The rest of this tier, we've got Pat Freiermuth, Mike Gesicki, Jake Ferguson, Brenton Strange, Zach Ertz, and Hunter Henry. Now, Pat Freiermuth, I think we just kind of know who he is at this point. He is a reliable target in an offense that simply just like won't run enough pass plays for him to really ascend out of this tier. I will say with Pickens out, it gets a little more open for him, but like we had that last year. It was just him and Pickens basically, and he had a fine offensive year, and they'll throw the ball 30 times a game, even if Rodgers is their quarterback, and it is what it is. All right, Mike Gesicki, age 29, finally found himself a home in Cincinnati, signed a 3-year extension this offseason. With how bad the Bengals defense is projected to be again in 2025, like I think Gesicki could definitely post low-end tight end 1 numbers because he's just kind of in the right place at the right time. He is the clear third option in the passing game, obviously behind Chase, behind T. Higgins, but if either Chase or Higgins get hurt, which has happened a decent amount of times in the course of both of their careers, like he sees a massive spike in volume and production. So I like Gesicki as a 2. Jake Ferguson, the addition of George Pickens definitely hurts Ferguson's like target ceiling in the opposite direction of Pat Freiermuth, where it opens up more targets for him. He's proven to be a favorite of Dak when healthy, and he's also on a historically bad touchdown run right now. He had 0 all of last year. He had like 5 the year before, and then as soon as the regular season ended, had 3 in that first playoff game. Like, I don't know if that changes, but I will say if Dak has a full 17 games of health, like I think Jake Ferguson will end up being a top 15 option at tight end. Brenton Strange in Jacksonville, he showed glimpses in 2024, and now you got Evan Engram gone, so he has the tight end room basically like completely to himself. If he's going to be good, like he has every opportunity to show that, and he showed it, a little bit last year, and I think he could be a Jake Ferguson type where it's like, all right place, right time, good quarterback, good offense, good scheme. Like we saw what Liam Cohen did with Cade Otton when Mike Evans or Chris Godwin was hurt. That tight end became a very, very large part of the passing offense. As did Zach Ertz in Washington last year. I mean, he defied all fucking odds, and he finished as the tight end 7 in PPR. And I mean, that's, thanks mainly to Jaden Daniels' breakout. But that being said, like Benson Ott, the rookie last year, showed literally nothing to suggest that he won't be the backup to Zach Ertz again in 2025. So like Ertz, if you owned him last year, if you were like streaming him, he was good for you, man. He became like a very, very reliable check down option for Jaden Daniels. So I like Zach Ertz. I like Hunter Henry as well. I thought he had an underrated 2024. He averaged in the 10 games with Drake May as the full starter, he averaged over 10 PPR points per game. I know that's not like a ton, but if you're just getting a guy who's going to average 10 points per game in your tight end position, you're going to feel relatively good about it. He's not a big touchdown scorer, but I will say, like the way that this offense is made up right now, the way that we're looking at the Patriots, they're going to take a huge step up. Like they're not going to need 6 guys on the line of scrimmage. They're not going to need Hunter Henry to block. They're not going to need Austin Hooper to block as much because they've revamped their offensive line. This is also a team that was going from 0, win upside last year to a team that is now favored in 11 of their 17 games. That I thought was a crazy statistic I came across recently. But I think the passing offense should be better. Drake May year 2, better offensive line. I like Hunter Henry. Tier number 6. This is, I'll call this this is the tier where you all get mad at me. This is the tier where I cannot make a sound statistical argument for drafting these guys as a starter or even really getting into the top 15 options, all right? We've got Dalton Kincaid. We've got Dallas Goedert. We've got Cade Otton. We've got Colson Loveland. We've got Kyle Pitts. We've got Tyler Warren, Jatavian Sanders, Dalton Schultz, Juwan Johnson, and Isaiah Likely. Dalton Kincaid, to me, he's been given every opportunity in the world to break out in the NFL, and he's disappointing. He's extremely disappointing, and the thing that's kind of fucking annoying is everyone's going to be like, didn't you just say it takes a minute to break out? You don't have that luxury. Like David Njoku came in the league as like a 14-year-old. Dalton Kincaid came in the league as a grown-ass man, like 24 years old. You got to do it soon. You got to be league ready if you're that old as a prospect. The Bills have like very, very, very rarely used him downfield whatsoever. They continue to invest in their passing game offseason in, offseason out, bringing in Josh Palmer, bringing in Elijah Moore. Dawson Knox is still in town. Last year, Dawson Knox averaged more snaps per game than Dalton Kincaid. They used a first-round pick on this pass-catching tight end 2 years ago, and I loved him as a prospect coming out, but I have zero confidence they're actually going to use him in a way that is going to allow us to see the fantasy tight end upside that we wanted from Kincaid. So he is, if you're going into the year with him as your starter, you're in trouble. I would say the same thing with Dallas Goedert. Like, he has been an afterthought in this passing game behind Brown and Devontae Smith since Brown has showed up. He very rarely scores touchdowns for them. He is just not a part of their red zone offense. It is just, at this point, Saquon, Jalen Hurts, Saquon, Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts. The problem, too, that I've pointed out with A.J. Brown and DeMonte Smith and why they rank them a little bit lower, same thing with Jalen Hurts, is just the downtick in passing volume for this offense. They don't need to throw the ball that much because Saquon Barkley now carries the rock 25 times per game. They have an elite defense. You just don't need to throw the ball more than 25, 27 times per game. And if you're already the third guy in the passing order, and I would almost say maybe fourth because Saquon is there, like in a low passing volume offense, a guy that's not involved in the red zone at all, like what are we looking at? What are we even talking about here? We got Cade Otton. I like Otton as a player, but he literally only produces when Mike Evans and or Chris Godwin are out. And now we add a first-round wide receiver, Emeka Egbuka, to the rotation here. So he is off the radar for me. Colston Loveland, rookie tight ends just, historically have a bad track record, even top 10 rookie tight ends in terms of draft pick. We saw what Ben Johnson did with Sam Laporta in Detroit as a rookie, so I don't want to write off Loveland. The offense is set up to smash, I think, and I think they really, really will with the change of scenery and the change of scheme and everything. But they do have so many good players there already. I still think he's going to share snaps with Cole Kmet. I don't think Cole Kmet will really outproduce him from a receiving standpoint, like statistically. But just like with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, they're going to split snaps, right? And Colston Loveland, maybe he averages 36 snaps a game, and Cole Kmet's at like 28, but that's still a large percentage of the overall pie here. And when you're sharing targets with now Luther Burden coming in and DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, yeah, I can't make a super, super sound statistical argument for Colston Loveland outside of draft capital. Kyle Pitts, we're just going to say no. Tyler Warren, love the talent, but you add him to a very, very crowded Indy receiver room where it's hard to even project high volume of passing efficiency and or volume here with either Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. So you're talking about a guy that's going to be catching passes in a crowded receiver room from like one of two bottom tier accuracy throwers of the football. This might be a little bit rich, but I did have Jatavian Sanders in this tier. I think he was a really cool prospect coming out of Texas. I think he showed real flashes as a rookie as well. Got hurt, obviously, but like when you look at Bryce Young and what he did over the second half of the year, it's like hard not to get excited about this passing offense. He was averaging 32 pass attempts per game over the last 8 games of the season. So the entire second half of the season, he was averaging more passes per game than a lot of well-known dudes. You're talking about the Jordan Loves, the Josh Allens, a lot of high-volume quarterbacks. Bryce Young was throwing the ball more than them and throwing it with a very, very high ADOT. Second highest ADOT in the NFL over that span behind only Lamar Jackson. So I am optimistic about buying passing offensive pieces in this Carolina receiving room, Jatavian Sanders being one of them. Dalton Schultz, after 4 years of consistent mid-tier production, Schultz's numbers like dipped, obviously in parallel with CJ Stroud's kind of sophomore slump. And I'm not fully convinced that the passing game is going to like be righted here, but it wouldn't surprise me if Dalton Schultz just finishes inside the top 15 at this position, just because CJ Stroud has a bounce back. The offense is better without Slowick there running it. Whatever, Dalton Schultz, I'm not uninspiring. All right, Juwan Johnson. Somehow this dude led the Saints in receiving yards last year. That was a stat that blew me away. He battled injuries for the most part. Let's not like bury the lead here. It was 548 yards, so not a very high bar, but he did battle injuries for most of the year. And one of the first things that New Orleans did this offseason, like one of the very first things they did was sign him to a 3-year, $30 million extension. And then you add in Taysom Hill with like a week 17 ACL tear. I don't know if we're ever going to see him on the field for the New Orleans Saints again. Then you got Isaiah Likely in this tier as well. I think we all know he'd be an elite fantasy option at tight end if Mark Andrews was not in Baltimore. Unfortunately, that's just not the reality of the situation. He is one of the very, very few true handcuff tight ends in fantasy football. Outside of that, we can move into tier 7, I guess. I guess I'll label this like wouldn't surprise me to finish as a top 20 guy overall, or like you'll waste fab on these guys at some point in the year. First one is Tyler Conklin. He goes to the Chargers. Like, there's a world where Tyler Conklin becomes a reliable weekly target for Justin Herbert, but there's also a world where the Chargers just run the ball 35 times per game, and every tight end on the Chargers roster finishes the season with like 27 catches, okay? We've got Chiggy in Tennessee. Maybe Cam Ward sparks some life back into him. I think Mason Taylor's an interesting tight end out there in New York. You're talking about a top 45 pick to a team that doesn't really have a tight end now that Tyler Conklin is gone. Justin Fields and Cole Kmet had some cool chemistry, but overall it's going to be a very low passing volume team, and this is a rookie tight end. Statistically, very, very hard to break out as a rookie. So Mason Taylor did get drafted in that like Sam Laporta-ish range, so I could see the similarities Mason Taylor is a dude with extremely strong hands, so I could see him becoming a potential target for Justin Fields pretty quickly there. So I'll throw him in here, and I think you could maybe argue that he deserves to be in the tier above. But regardless, these are not guys that I want to go into the year as my starter by any means. So there you have it. You have the top, I don't even know how many I did there, top 25, top 30 tight ends for the fantasy football season 2025. We'll be doing a ton of draft content throughout the rest of the summer, rankings content, list content, breakout, superstar type beats. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the button that looks like this. Subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I will see you very early next week. The volume of content is about to start rolling upwards as soon as June 1 hits. I'm out of here. I love you. Smoochies.